Rob Kendall speaking with Brian Woodard, the head coach of the Plainfield Quakers. Coach, how's it going?
Doing very well, Rob. Yourself?
I'm doing just great, man. I'll tell you what, that game Friday night was, as Dick Vitale used to say, awesome with a capital A. What a great win.
It was, been a long time since we, we're in the left-hand column and getting a win versus those guys. Couldn't have come in a more dramatic fashion. Had some really, really, really close games with DC over the years. Won a couple of them, but unfortunately, have let quite a few of those kind of slip through our fingers. So there were a lot of factors that kind of collided there, in terms of being an overtime game. It was homecoming team that we haven't had a lot of success with here recently. So I think in I don't know, pro sports for sure, college sports, people talk about like statement victories and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't believe in those kind of things. But in terms of like what I call really awesome program wins, that was certainly would fall into that category. It was good for everybody.
I don't want to do the thing where like, hey, is this the greatest win you've ever had? Because that's probably when you've had as many as you have.
Yeah.
Hard to think of. But man, I'll tell you what, that's got to be up there.
It was, for everything I just said, it was just a lot of fun. And, to celebrate it afterwards with our players, we're super excited. Our student body hung around the entire night. Our cheer blocks stayed in place. And, it's just when you have those kind of moments, for me as a coach, former player, obviously, my time playing the game is long gone. And I would equate it to this. Those folks that are listening that are parents, one of the most special things about Christmas when you have smaller kids is you get to see that experience through the eyes of your children, or going to a theme park or whatever, and you get to relive some of those moments. And for me, that was what was most special about Friday night. Wasn't about, me, obviously. It was just me smiling, looking at our players and just loving how much enjoyment they were getting from that opportunity to win that game, and those closing moments, just like I said, was pretty awesome.
Let's talk about the game itself. And it is amazing to me how much your offensive and defensive lines have improved as you have gotten people back throughout the course of the year. You see it all the time in the pros or even in college. Hey, so-and-so's out, but they're still a professional taking that person's place. Are they as good? Maybe not, but they're still a professional. High school, man, having one or two guys out, even if they're not at skill positions, can have such a profound impact on a team because you guys are a different team the last 3 weeks.
Well, I'll start, O-line wise in terms of those kind of things. You have to play with 5 offensive linemen. That's the rules dictate it. You can't get away really without doing it any other way. And yeah, you could swap out a jersey for a guy, and but it's not, missing offensive linemen are huge. And Tommy Spilker, yes, he's a young guy, but getting Tommy back a couple weeks ago, and he wasn't, he's been working his way back. He had the appendix issue, way back week 1. So, he's kind of been rounding himself back into just playing shape, and so I think he's getting closer to being 100%. I think we saw that on Friday, and then, mentioned it several times. Nobody is more vital to our team in general than Chris Strange. Chris is a 3-year starter. There's not a lot of those guys on our team. So both of those guys, O-line and D-line alike, getting back makes a huge difference, big time in stopping the run, and big time for our offense, obviously, in wanting to run the ball.
Strange is a dominant player, right? And you don't even realize it until you see him there, because obviously doing those first couple games without him there and then him there, it's just like a different defense with that very large person in the middle of it.
Big guy, moves really well, and he plays with an edge, not in a bad way, but just hey, you're not gonna shove us around, Chris, from a leadership perspective, is just, he's just a calming influence. I think. When Chris is on the field, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to find a way. We're going to get this done. So, a lot of those things, when you have players like Tommy and like Chris, they bring a confidence level to everyone else where sometimes when they're not there, it's just harder, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying that.
Do you look at a game on Friday and sometimes scratch your head because like the first two drives of the game offensively are so super dominant and they were almost perfect. And then you guys went, I can't remember, I think it was like 5 drives in a row where you struggled to even maybe didn't get a first down. Like what goes through your head as a coach during the game when you have such a stark contrast in terms of moving the football?
Lots of bad words. That's a good question. Personally, I'm so consumed with what's going on, on the other side of the ball at any given time. I don't ever really have the opportunity to delve too far into, hey, what's going on besides the obvious of what I'm seeing now. What I see and what I look for as a head coach is, are we making mistakes? Are we jumping off sides on 1st down and 10 and now it's 1st and 15? Are we, did we have a holding call and now it's 2nd and 20? Right. So I'm looking at those things and I will quickly be able to go to the bench maybe afterwards and have a quick conversation with our players about those things. I try to stay out of the X's and O's too much. I don't question play calls, those kind of things with my coordinators. So I stay away from those. But to go way back to the origination of your question, I think a lot of times the reason why you have drives stall, I think sometimes players get comfortable. And 2, I just mentioned, I think there are unforced error mistakes, and a lot of those are penalty mistakes. Those are the number one drive killers in football, are penalties. And when they come early in the set of downs, it's even more challenging.
Let's go down into that game. And obviously both teams had the same issue, which was an inability to make an extra point late. Ultimately, you decided to go for 2 in the overtime. Is that why you decided to go for 2?
Well, first off, the PAT issues, I, wanted to talk a little bit about, it's like, being a kicker is kind of like a quarterback, right? And so the quarterback throws an interception, everybody's on the quarterback's rear end. But, there's so many other things that factor into that: protection, routes, same thing as a kicker. It's, hey, I'm going out there to kick this thing, but, there's got to be a snap, there's got to be a hold, there's got to be protection issues. So I was very disappointed in our PAT field goal unit, which for the most part all year long has been really, really good. So that was that gave me, as we went through the game and it looked like it was going to be close, I still wanted to kick in that period, but DC jumped off sides, and we had just a quick moment there of coaches kind of came to me and I running through my head to say, hey, what do we think about going for 2 here? Like, let's go, let's do it.
Is that simple?
Yeah, it is, just like Russell Wilson, baby. Let's ride. And so I don't do a Russell Wilson voice, but those of you that are familiar with that know what I'm talking about. It really is that simple. But and that's kind of a, I don't want to say smart football move, but I mean you'll see that a lot when a team, jumps off sides on a point after attempt, the ball gets moved half the distance. So now it's 1.5 yards. So it makes it, for a team that, like us, like, okay, hey, let's push this sucker in. We've done it 4 times now, makes it a lot more appealing and put us in a position that I felt much, much better about in that overtime period.
Take us through the final play of the game. Obviously, Decatur Central scores. They need a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Just kind of take us through as it developed, and you saw that ball fall to the ground in the end zone. I mean, it sounds weird to say a game in the middle of the regular season. It's not like, hey, now we're number 1 in the state, but it had to be just a incredible feeling to finally beat those guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we played so well for different stretches. The one area defensively that we were struggling with were the pass coverage kind of situations, and they did a few little things down the stretch there where they would go empty. So empty just means nobody in the backfield with the exception of the quarterback. There's 3 receivers to one side, 3 receivers to the other side. Well, to the 3 receiver side, they would kind of tack on what we would call a wing, or so think of a tight end that's off the ball, and we were losing that player in coverage, and so that was how they scored in the 2 point play area. So I'm sorry, in the overtime situation. So the 2 point play, we were worried, we were screaming, we were yelling. We felt like we were going to see something like that they ran, that little back out play. They just didn't execute it, and so when that ball fell flat, hallelujah. The football gods finally shined on us a little bit there. So yeah, it was a neat deal. Sometimes, it's better to be lucky than good. And I think we were just lucky there.
Your team is 3-3, but they feel a lot better than 3-3. I mean, you could easily be 5-1, but this feels like a team with a lot of momentum behind it right now.
Good momentum. Talked this morning to our coaches, said the same thing to our coaches on Saturday morning. If our players aren't at an all-time high right now in terms of buy-in, we're not ever going to get a buy-in, right? And what do you mean by buy-in? Like, coach, they're high school players. Shouldn't they be bought in because they put the jersey on? Yeah, they should be. But we don't coach in, it's not 1991 anymore. And sometimes there's a trust factor that is involved. Players just don't trust how you're coaching it or what you're asking of them enough. So it's a challenge. So in this moment, you hope through this progression of these 6 weeks, players have saw themselves doing it their way and failing, and hopefully, hey, I'm trying to do it the way coach is asking me to do it, and having success. I'll use my own position as an example. I coach a couple guys out there that are having a great deal of success, and it's not because of my coaching. It's their ability to take what's happening in practice, and it's translating over into the field on Fridays. They're playing free. They're playing with a lot of confidence, and that's what we're trying to do as coaches, right? A position coach, at least, is how can I get my guys to play fast, play free, and play with confidence. And I hope, as you mentioned, win a couple games in a row here. Hopefully, you get more of that from more players.
All right, let's thank the sponsors that make the broadcast possible all year long. CCB Contracting, Geodis, Ganell Financial, Julia Burbridge of Remax Centerstone Plainfield, Kyle Burnfield, mortgage lender at Flagstar Bank, Team Turley Fairway Mortgage, Bailey & Wood Financial Group, African Plum Home, My IT Indy at myitindy.com, I-70 Wrecker Service and Garage, BGW Construction LLC, Beacon Sign Company, Jeff Brown Photography, Karen Alexander Photography, and Whitlow's Towing. All right, before we get to this Friday night, Coach, I got to say, I have been around you for about 15 years. I've gotten to know your boy over the years, but I have never met your wife before Friday night in person. I've corresponded with her. She is way too nice and lovely for you. I don't know how you pulled that off, but good work.
In using a football analogy, sometimes you outkick your coverage. Yeah, I'm blessed, man. My wife is a pretty special lady. She's not one of those over the top people that are screaming and yelling and don't you hurt my baby kind of a person. She hangs back in the shadows, but she's a super hard worker and keeps the fires burning at home a lot of times while still holding down a pretty daggone important job as a CNS at IU West. So family's blessed to have her. So yeah, she was pretty excited to finally put the face with the name and the voice, because my son, Blake, does impressions of you. So we've gotten to know you, or she's gotten to know you through Blake's impressions.
Yeah, I told her, and you can thank me for this later. I told her all the things that she should have you do next year to make up for all the Friday nights over the years she's had to be at your football game. So you've got a litany of things that I know as a husband you will absolutely love doing, and so you can thank me for that about this time next year.
You're so kind. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, let's take a look ahead to Friday night on the road at Franklin. What does Franklin? What do the Grizzlies bring to the table?
Yeah, well, so pulling out just for a second, looking big picture, we talked a little bit about it last week. Headed into this, final month of the season, we're going to run the gauntlet here. We play, ranked Decatur Central, ranked Franklin, ranked Martinsville, or ranked Whiteland, ranked Martins. I mean, this is it. I mean, we're going to find out everything we need to know about our team. And I think Franklin is the most complete football team that we played up to this point. They have a few players that are probably the best in the conference. Max Clark, who is arguably the best baseball player in the nation, comes back to them. Had played a couple games early, then went and did some Major League Baseball stuff. I don't know exactly what that was, but now he's back. He's incredible. They're just, I mean, they're super well rounded. Chris Call, one of my good coaching friends, is their head coach. Will have them very well coached. Lance Mayfield, who coached here for quite a while. Lance was our offensive line coach. He's their O-line coach and run game coordinator. They're very, very good up front. I mean, they're just, I mean, I think one of our coaches said it earlier today. It's a Franklin and Chris Call coach teams always play hard. They're just now playing hard with really good football players.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, you think about early on in your coaching career, the back part of that schedule, it was kind of, not to say it was a breather, but it was in a sense, it was like Franklin, Whiteland, yeah, Martinsville, we should win these games. And now it's like, ooh, that's pretty tough.
And it changes, right, from year to year. And, to go way back, I mean, the schedule was a lot different. This schedule got reconfigured when we went to a 17 conference, right? We used to have 3 non-conference games, and that kind of jumbled things up a little bit. So once it shifted to this kind of alignment, you start looking at the back end of your schedule, especially past couple years. I mean, it's woof, you don't want to look too far ahead. And the reason is you keep you up at night. I mean, it's really good. And this year, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a very good historian of like remembering back 5 or 6 years ago in terms of the conference. But I mean, the Mid-State Conference is daggone legit. I mean, and it's good every year, but you're talking about, teams that are ranked. I mean, Whiteland up until last Friday was the number 1 team in 5A. I mean, they're not number 1 for just no reason. They're really good, and they got beat. So, it's crazy. But yeah, Franklin going to their place. Like I said, most complete team we've seen all year. We're going to have to stay healthy this week. I don't know, where they're at in that respect, getting this later in the year, but we're going to have to come ready to play. That's for sure.
Yeah, in regards to, maybe it's Hoosier Crossroads Conference. For years, it was the MIC. I don't think that's true anymore. You can make a compelling case your conference, based on size of the schools, is the toughest week in and week out of any conference in the state.
I mean, it's arguable, right? I mean, HCC probably takes that billing. I think, our bottom end of the conference right now probably is out of touch. Not out of touch. That's the wrong way of saying that. It's not comparable to the top end, whereas maybe the HCC, it is a little bit more. You look at Avon right now as a winless team in the HCC, and had a chance to beat Fishers, who's up at the top end of that conference. I don't know that you see that in our conference as much, but you don't see it at all in the MIC. I think the MIC is overrated when it comes to that, top to bottom. I think HCC is probably the more, preeminent conference when it comes to just pure competition. Obviously, the MIC has really, really good teams, but no slouches in the Mid-State. Even the teams that maybe aren't record-wise as good, they still have good football players and are very well coached.
All right. Again, before we wrap up the show today, let's thank the sponsors: CCB Contracting, Geodis, Ganell Financial, Julia Burbridge of Remax Centerstone, Plainfield, Kyle Burnfield, mortgage lender at Flagstar Bank, Team Turley Fairway Mortgage, Bailey & Wood Financial Group, African Plum Home, MyIT Indy at myITindy.com, I-70 Wrecker Service and Garage, BGW Construction LLC, Beacon Sign Company, Jeff Brown Photography, Karen Alexander Photography. Before we go, Coach, I ask you to give us somebody behind the scenes. Man, the crowd was awesome on Friday night. The place was packed. The Plainfield football fans, as they've done for years and years and years, but it seems like especially this year, they're really showing up in full force, and that's got to be a huge help for these home games.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the direction I was going. Wanted to end the show and talk about it. Even before I talk about that, just wanted to quickly mention, on our show, don't always get a chance to mention every kid's name and talk, about every single kid. I think you and I, we have that we sometimes go on tangents, which I think it sometimes makes our show entertaining. At least I hope it does. But so many great individual performances on Friday. From seniors to juniors to sophomores down the line. So many kids just absolutely gave everything they had. So if you're a player and you're listening to this, thinking, why didn't Coach mention my name? We know who you are. And we have those players of the game every week, and we appreciate all of our guys for sure. And to go back, talking about our student body, that's who I wanted to mention this week, and just to say thank you. Thank you for sticking around in that game where there were a couple times it looked bleak. I thought, oh boy, this is going to get away from us here. But our students stuck in there. They gathered right there on the track, and people might say, what are you guys doing? You're rushing out on the field for a week 6 victory at homecoming. Yeah, you're daggone right we are, baby. So I loved it. I loved the enthusiasm, loved all the kids coming up. I got a big water bath at the end of that sucker. And man, it was just awesome getting to celebrate with our fans like that. So thanks. And, hopefully they'll be with us this week as we head down to Franklin. What's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, Coach, but several years ago, I started predicting you would get 100 wins in your coaching career. And after about week 2 or 3, we said, man, these guys are going to have to turn it on to get you those 100 wins. I know you're not thinking about it at all, but they are turning it on. And that is my goal, is to see you get win number 100 this year. So let's get a big win on Friday night. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
I appreciate you, Rob. Take care, buddy.